Welcome, welcome. I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and I'm so glad to have a special guest with me today. We have actually merged our audiences together, and please let us know if you all have questions on this topic. So I would like my guest, Betty, Coach B, to introduce herself real quick.
Hello, first of all, thank you for having me. Hello, audience. Nice to meet you. I am an ADHD money coach. I am the owner of Young, Rich, and Rooted. I am the visionary of the baddie community, which is an endearing term I have given us Black women with ADHD trying to work on their personal finances. I got into this particular niche of money management because I realized that our brains are different. And so the way we need to manage money needs to be different. And there really aren't a lot of resources, tools, money management systems to support us. And so we are brilliant, gifted people who work really, really hard. And we don't feel like we're seeing the results of all that effort. And we think it's something that's wrong with us, like we're just not good with math, or we're lazy, or we don't work hard enough, when really it's not that. It is probably just ADHD. And so I'm here to support my community.
Nice. And just for Betty's audience, so I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And here on YouTube, I share resources about normally I react to court stuff. So anyone that's here for the court stuff, like this is different. This is more the mental health education side. But most of what I do here on YouTube is reacting to legal stuff. And if you could start off with like why this is important to you and just start that part of the conversation.
Thank you. I think the beginning of my career in the financial industry, I saw money as an obstacle to a lot of people um, living the kind of life they want to live and having the healthy family dynamic that they wanted. I saw money as a constant source of arguments in marriages, a constant point of tension in families with between children and mothers or fathers arguing over last minute field trip and little things like that. And I felt like if I could impact our financial health, then I would be able to impact our community's overall health. On this journey along the way, I started noticing that some of the areas that people, or some of the people who were struggling with money, were struggling for mental health reasons. And I began to get passionate about mental health and money and really understanding a correlation between our actual wellness and what we're doing with our money. Um, I always say Guy has a great sense of humor because he, rather than have me learn these things in school, he's like, nah, I'm going to give it to you in real life. And I had to go on my own journey of mental health crisis, which is ironically the last time we had a live together, we were talking about, navigating crisis at the beginning of the pandemic. And a lot of us were experiencing that. And I was just coming out of my own personal crisis. And then during the pandemic, discovered that I actually do have ADHD. I suspected it for a little while, but didn't know it. And in understanding what it is, that period of crisis made so much more sense. It also made sense how I could be both really good with money and really bad in certain seasons of my life. And that was something that was killing my self-esteem for a good part of my life because I know better than this. I know what to do, and I couldn't understand why those things weren't connecting. But being able to connect both the brain, our heart, and our money together made money management so much easier and so much more compassionate, which is what why I do this. I wanted people
Nice.
to be kind to themselves.
Nice. And we talked about starting with kind of what is ADHD. And so, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, there are three different presentations. Some people have a predominantly inattentive. So, that's what we used to call ADD. So, now in the DSM 5, it is all ADHD with three different presentations or types. Some people are predominantly hyperactive impulsive, and then some people are a combination of both. And ADHD in adults is really common. So I have an article linked in the description about ADHD tax, and we might scroll through. It just depends on how the conversation goes. But I have that resource down there. It said that over 8.9 million people are diagnosed with ADHD. A lot, I want to say combined presentation might be one of the most popular. What that And girls, so ADHD presents different in 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 females and girls versus boys. And the ones who are hyperactive impulsive, they get diagnosed in kindergarten. They get diagnosed in first grade. The ones that are more inattentive, daydreamers, maybe difficulty concentrating, easily off task, difficulty completing tasks, those individuals sometimes don't get diagnosed until college or until like much, much later because they didn't present a problem for the teacher. Something that's interesting, and I don't know if you know, that ADHD and hormones. So hormones are connected, where
Oh
often
no.
people have more symptoms during their menstrual cycle during yes where attention focus those symptoms
Write
sometimes.
that down.
And I get this from Dr. Sasha. I might jack up her last name, Dr. Sasha Hamdi. And I have her book, ADHD Self Care. Let me go on ahead and share that link. She wrote a book, and she has it's self care for people with ADHD. And she's on Instagram and TikTok, and she has a YouTube, but I have that resource linked down in the description too, because I think it's really important that people know that there are tools, that there are things that can help, because it can feel very isolating. You can feel like, what's wrong with me? There can be a lot of shame that comes up. So I'm glad that we're breaking some of that stigma. And then my audience knows. So I likely have masked and struggled with ADHD all of my life. And I grew up in the 80s. And so back in the 80s, it was like, ain't nothing wrong with you. Like, you just need to,
Sit down
you're
somewhere.
just this or you're just that. And even as a licensed mental health professional, I always struggled with things that I do believe are connected to ADHD. I self-diagnose with coffee. Not I
Self
self-medicate.
medicate.
I self-medicate. But I do see some signs in my child, and he'll likely be assessed hopefully sometime this summer. Because I do think diagnosis can direct treatment. Because sometimes people, they'll fear a diagnosis, or their fear like th- just not wanting the label. But I think the label can sometimes help, just it can
It's
help give
empowering.
clarity. Yes, yeah, so you can go ahead, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, it's really empowering to know. I suspected I had ADHD probably 5 years before the formal diagnosis, but it was because I was looking into my daughter. And my understanding about ADHD is it's um, very genetic. So there's a good chance that if you have ADHD, somebody in your family probably did too. So at the time, I didn't notice this, but when I was looking into ADHD for Jordan, and she was probably in maybe kindergarten or first grade then, I was reading the things and I was like, that sounds like me. Like, I feel seen for the first time in my life, but I never actually went through the process of formal diagnosis. I just strongly suspected it. And then during the pandemic, when I had a real bout with depression, and started going to a mental health professional and started going to see a psychologist and a psychiatrist and was formally diagnosed with ADHD, so much made sense. And it also gave me permission to self advocate, because before, when I only thought I had ADHD, asking for accommodations felt like it didn't feel valid. It didn't feel
Yeah.
like I got permission. It almost feels like parking in a handicap space without a tag, right? You need
Yeah.
proof that you belong here, that you deserve this accommodation. And once I had the diagnosis, I could self advocate and articulate why I needed this accommodation, why I needed why I wanted things the way I wanted them. And it made it easier for me emotionally just to ask for the help, that I wasn't just lazy, that I could actually see the problems and where the problems were coming from. And that was so empowering because it improved my self-esteem. It was making me, there was lots of times in my life where I just would beat myself up. I developed like a really negative inner voice about myself because of how ADHD was showing up all my life and I didn't know it. And I also didn't know how to communicate it. When I would have these boundaries, barriers, it would be like my grades didn't necessarily reflect my capacity. I'd be testing out of everything, but I might be in a class failing because I wasn't turning in homework. And so because I was smart, it seemed like, are you just lazy? When maybe I really couldn't organize my thoughts. I struggled to learn how to study, and I didn't know how to study until high school because I never needed to study. So that's part of why, it probably didn't get present until much later in life.
And what you said is so powerful. And people, because I've heard of people going to a psychologist and them asking, "Oh, so what kind of grades did you get?" And the person said, "Oh, I got mostly, B's and C's." And they're like, "Oh, nope, you don't have ADHD." Or I got A's and B's, but they didn't dig deeper to
Mhm.
say, I got A's and B's because I turned all my missing work in. Like I stayed up for 3 days to get everything done right at the end. Or
Mhm.
so I'm always losing I'm always losing my keys. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking on my phone and,
I
looking
can't
for my
find my
keys.
phone.
I
I
can't
don't know. I'm
like
on my way up. I can just
like
find my
like,
phone.
"Oh my gosh, like, where is my phone?" And my mom is like, Patrice is like, "Oh." And then what I see in my kiddo is we have 2 to 3 jackets that because he is going to leave his jacket at school. He just is. And, he's gonna leave 1 water bottle, like he's just keeping up with things is a bit of a struggle. And when you automatically assume that somebody is being intentional, or if that shame creeps up of what's wrong with me, and that's where I talk about living with a diagnosis versus like suffering from, or struggling. And some people, because like if it's a struggle, I validate, or when it's a struggle, I definitely
Mhm.
validate that struggle. But it's my goal to help clients live well. And I want to live well. And undiagnosed, untreated ADHD can lead to anxiety, depression. It can lead to people missing. It can actually lead to like car accidents, and like there's like
Loss of jobs,
yeah.
lots of there's there's a tax,
Mhm.
on being neurodivergent. And I think the biggest tax we pay is to our self-esteem, our sense of self.
Mhm.
Because then when you start to doubt your capacity, because historically you remember all the times you failed or didn't follow through, it makes it harder for you to believe that you could do something moving forward. It makes it hard for you to want to apply for this job because you start to see all the ways you'll fail in it.
Yeah.
You struggle with being able to envision success, and we absolutely are capable of having success. When I describe ADHD to my community as far as like managing money, I always say like we see ADHD and we feel like something's wrong with us as opposed to something's different about us. And the best way that I could explain it was being left-handed. Is both my parents are left-handed, and I remember my mom having like left-handed scissors to sew. And if I go to like any store, Walmart, Dollar Tree, I'm not going to find left-handed scissors. I'm not. But it doesn't mean that my mom can't sew with right-handed scissors. It's just going to be harder because those scissors aren't made for her. And in our world with managing money, the systems and really going through life, not just managing money, the systems are not set up for left-handed people. They're set up for right-handed people. We're capable, but we need to then go out and acquire the tools for ourselves. Unfortunately, we have to go the extra mile. My mom has to go the extra mile to get left-handed scissors, and oftentimes we have to go the extra mile to figure out what planners really do work better for us, which apps actually do work better for us, which style of budgeting works better for us, because what is being thrown at us as what to do are are things that work for neurotypical people. And it's not wrong, it's not bad, it's just not right for us.
Yes.
And something else I found incredibly empowering is I find that more often our solutions are more inclusive, meaning ADHD, the solutions I use for ADHD feels like, you know how the math expression, and this is me nerding, right? A square is always a rectangle, but a rectangle isn't always a square. So for me, it's like when I give somebody a tool like using clear containers to store their flour sugar so it's easier for them to visually see that they're running out, they don't have to worry about forgetting. Well, that tool works for neurotypical people too,
Yeah.
but we need it, but it also works for them. Now, the container that's completely solid can work perfectly fine for somebody who's neurotypical, but for us, it'd be a lot harder. So it's like their tool is not bad. It's just not good for us, but our tools work for everybody.
Yeah.
So I love that, our community, we're creating spaces for ourselves because I do feel like we're actually going to be able to make things more effective for everyone.
I love that. And I think finding systems and things that work for you and then being flexible with it because that system I set up, it might work for a period of time and then there might be a time that it no longer works and I might
Mhm.
have to adjust. And often with ADHD, one of the hardest things is to start a new process. And so sometimes figuring out what works for that individual. I love that you're sharing like what the adjustments that you've made or just kind of how you see things because I'm seeing in the comments that people are really resonating with a lot of the analogies.
Oh,
With
thank you.
with ADHD tax, what can happen is things like parking tickets and missing work or being late. So late fees for appointments or late fees for bills, missing paying bills, or uh, impulsive spending or
Mhm.
excessive spending. And I've also seen forgetting to return things. So maybe
Mm.
impulsively spending and buying something and being like, "Oh, I'm gonna return that." And
Forgetting to
then
cancel
like 3 months later,
subscriptions.
like, "Oops." Yeah, the subscription one too.
Mhm. There's so many little areas that life costs us a lot more for those very reasons. Losing jobs because you're late too many times, being a really effective worker, but just losing track of time. Um, I joked with my my therapist. I was like, I forgot my ADHD medication. It was like a new one, and I was having a hard time wanting to call the doctor to let him know that I needed another prescription because this would be the second time that he was replacing a prescription. Last time I just forgot to pick it up, and I was like, I don't know why I have so much shame. And this is probably the rejection sensitivity area that comes with ADHD. And I thought it's kind of ridiculous for me to have even that fear because he's a doctor who specializes in ADHD. I'm sure he anticipates that his clients in particular are going to forget a lot. And so
And
I called him and I was like, who's going to remind me to get the things that are supposed to help remind me of things?
And I wish he could just send it automatically to the pharmacy or but then, like, you have to remember to go pick it up. And so, I love talking about that shame or because for me, what works for me and what I sometimes teach my clients is acceptance is an approval. And the way that I've learned to describe it is sometimes an apple will never be an orange, no matter how much I want it to be. And so if I just accept that, oh, it's an apple and I don't fight the fact. Like this is just how my brain works. So what I do is I have some things set up to be automatically paid. Like that works for me, auto pay. I'll put reminders in my calendar to make sure that there's enough money, to make sure that there aren't overdraft fees or anything. I hate fees. I once canceled something just because like there were gonna be fees, they wouldn't work out, not they're not being fees, and I was like, "Nope, my credit score is too good, like, nope, I don't do fees." And so making sure that you set things up in a way, and then being able to get over that shame. Because one time something happened and a fee popped up, And I called the bank because I researched it and I found out that they give you one free, like you can reverse it. Like
Hmm.
whoopsie. But you have to reach out to them. And
Right.
there was like a specific number you had to call. And sure enough, I did it. I reached out and they were able to reverse the fee. But it takes some self-advocacy, which can be hard because reaching out for help, asking for help, accepting help, those things can all be very difficult.
I'm so glad you said that, because what I coach my clients through is that there are three levels. I call this the root work. Um, and a lot of people want to start with the numbers. They think it's a math problem. And really it starts with self-awareness.
Yeah.
Having awareness about how you feel, what's going on in your life, having awareness that you're even doing something or that something is even going on. And then the second step is radical self-acceptance. And I felt like radical is important because it's getting to a point where you don't judge it. Like you can accept something and still be judging yourself about it. And when you get to radical acceptance, you're just like, this is it. It's not saying that this is it and who cares and I can't do anything about it, but you're just not judging it, like you said, as a fact. Like
Mhm.
it's like me judging the fact that I'm 5'1". Like, why would I sit here and ruminate over the fact that I can't reach anything out of the top cabinet? I'm annoyed with builders putting cabinets so high. But at the end of the day, I have accepted that I'm 5'1".
Yeah.
And radical self-acceptance gets me to the third step, which is self-advocacy. So to me, the root work is what I call is self-love, right? Self-awareness takes you to radical self-acceptance, takes you to self-advocacy. And self-advocacy, once you've accepted for yourself, you can ask for the right things from the right people. I know I'm 5'1", so I've accepted that I'm going to have more stools in my house than somebody else, and I'm fine with that. I have a ladder right over there. Okay. I've accepted it. I have accepted that I have to work on my jumping skills because sometimes I have to hop on the counter. I'm fine with it. And I'm going to continue to work on that skill set. Right.
But becoming a parent made me more open to asking for help because I'll never
Mhm.
forget flying with my child for the very first time, and I'm a big researcher, so I like to, like, watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos of, like, what do you do? What to look out for? And, this was, like, 4 or 5 years. It was a while back, and the biggest thing they said was, "If somebody offers to help you with your luggage, say yes." And the funniest thing that happened along this way is a stranger's helping me with my luggage, and then I realized I forgot a bag back at security. I'm like, so I have to take this bag, but I have my baby because that was my thing. Like, don't. The first things first. Like I have my son was I had him in a carrier. I had him, but sure enough, I left a bag back at security, and I had to go back. And so a lot of people that I work with ADHD, they're either early or late.
Mhm.
And it gives me anxiety to be late to things, and so I try to be early. Members of my channel, like, they'll know if I say it's gonna start at 1 o'clock, like, we're by 1:05, no later, 'cause, like, we are going to start, but that's my own, and I acknowledge, like, my own anxiety, my own stress. So when I go to the airport, I'm getting there early. So I
Mhm.
have never missed a flight, but, because, like, I like to I'm that person that wants to see the gate and make sure that it exists, and then,
But
like
I think the universe doesn't want me to be on time. I'm convinced that it conspires against me. I told you today, right, about my little mishap in my office. I was like, really? I feel like even when I'm early, I'm late. So like, speaking of the airport, I went to the airport one time and I got there really early, and then was just, you're sitting there waiting, and I lost track of time, and I hadn't gone through security
oh, no.
because
See,
we
you
were
have to
super
you have to
early.
you have to go
We were
through
super
security.
early.
I'll go
And
through
I lost
security 4
track
or
of
5
time,
hours early.
realized it, get through security thinking I'm gonna miss this flight. And they're standing at the door and they were waiting for me. They actually called us by name in the lobby and called me and my sister by name. And when I got there, they said, "We waited for you." And I was so surprised. They said, "We knew you checked in.
Oh, yeah.
So we knew you were here. And I feel like
Wow.
it was an anomaly, like that was God's grace or something. But I'm like, how am I early and yet still late? It doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to still be
So,
late.
for the listeners, time blindness is real. Where for ADHD, when you're doing something you love, so like scrolling, if you enjoy scrolling social media, you'll think you're doing it for 5 minutes, but it's actually been an hour. And but doing something you don't like, that will time will often creep by. So if you don't like doing math, doing 5 minutes of math will feel like an hour. And so for kids that I work with, or even with some adults, we talk about setting a timer, because the
Mhm,
idea of cleaning their kitchen, they're like, oh, like I don't even, like sometimes things keep getting put off, things keep getting put off. And it's like, just set a 15-minute timer and just do what you do in 15 minutes.
mhm,
Because often once you start a task, because that's sometimes the hardest thing, is getting started. And so
mhm,
sometimes doing little things like that, because then it's not, because the idea of just like cleaning the kitchen until it's clean, you might think it's going to take an hour, but it only took like 10 minutes, or it's only going to take 15 minutes to just straighten up. Like I'm not trying to perfect it. I'm not doing a deep clean. I was just trying to like wash enough dishes to have my coffee cup. Like that's it.
mhm.
And so I think being gentle with yourself, I think that goes with that self-love that you were talking about, and thinking about that voice. What's that
Mhm.
inner voice? Now sometimes that voice can push you to like to do something challenging, but sometimes that if that voice is making you feel worse about yourself and making you not want to do things, then that's where I would try to shift to
Mhm.
something more positive.
I heard someone say something today earlier about like doing things that are both comfortable and uncomfortable. Doing things uncomfortable is what gets you the grow, but doing things that are comfortable is what kind of continues to build your self confidence. And sometimes you need those ego boosts to yourself to be like, but I am good at something. So, like pairing something hard, like if managing money is hard, pairing doing money with something that comes very easily to you.
Mhm.
My daughter can pick up a paintbrush and paint anything or draw anything, and it just comes natural to her. And doing something hard and easy helps balance those emotional feelings that you're dealing with that day. So I like maybe even sandwiching, doing something that you're good at right before you have to do something hard, and then chasing that with something you're good at or something you enjoy might
And
help with the roller coaster.
and the ADHD brain is always searching for something novel, new, and interesting. And
Hmm.
so being careful, because let's say I get the random idea, like I'm gonna start to play hockey, like just out of the blue, like just like hockey. That's a new thing I want to pick up. Well, maybe look at renting equipment versus
Hmm.
buying it, because sometimes, a lot of times, people with ADHD start a lot of hobbies, and then like things will just pile up, or maybe sell some if you
Hmm.
can, if you're able to like sell some things that you don't use anymore, or exchange. So I'm in a buy nothing group where people just like give, like people will be like, oh, I have these golf clubs I don't want, and but like exercising restraint, like to not like say yes to everything, but but making sure to figure out what works best for you, and it's okay if it's different.
I love that. The idea of what's best for you is probably the most important piece to me, because when you get to that third step of self advocating, it's that step is it's important for you to be curious,
Mhm.
is constantly reevaluating. Like you might have said, hey, I need this accommodation or I want to try this system. And then you discover it doesn't work for you. And being okay with that doesn't work. Let me figure out what does work for me. Or this doesn't work for me anymore. Maybe it did work for you and it just no longer is effective.
Yeah.
Because our brains are really smart. You know, like some people say, like, well, create like false deadlines. Well, my brain knows that I'm lying to myself. So it completely like, no, I want you to procrastinate when it's really an emergency. I'm not going to give you false procrastination to motivate you. It doesn't work for me because
So
my brain has figured out that I'm a scammer
I do my best work
under
in the
pressure.
5th hour, like, I just do, and so I just plan to, "Okay, if I have 5 reports due this week," but I try to schedule things out, but I work for myself, and
Hmm.
so, um, uh I'm able to set things up in a way that works for me and
Mhm.
my brain. Um, but but being able to so I know the night before a report to do, Imma be sitting down watching TV, and Imma have my computer open, and I'm gonna be finishing up that report. And I don't do it from like, like, "Oh my gosh," like, "Oh, I
It's
got" like, it's like, "Oh,
you've
like,
given yourself permission
this is just what I do."
to
Yep.
work with your greatest energy, and maybe that's the difference is when we have shame around it, we are frustrated with ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, Something else is like I find that pushing the tasks that I overthink on think to the end is helpful too. Because if I have a project where I could create a million different ways to do something and I'm going to overthink this and absolutely get nothing done, it's better that I procrastinate that task where I don't have even the luxury of overthinking and I can just get straight. And I find that I can churn out something really good when I do have that pressure. So I feel like strategically placing my procrastinating task or Sunday school activities has been helpful as well. But it's really just a journey of learning yourself and learning ADHD specifically, and then learning ADHD as it relates to your life. And then in my case, as it relates to your financial life.
Yeah.
And getting to a point of like radical acceptance allows you to do things like put yourself on auto pay. But here's the thing,
Mhm.
some of the solutions that would work for us are scary when you're not in a position to do it. So one of the things I like to talk about is like, well, we're constantly forgetting to pay a bill, even if you have the money to pay a bill, or um, constantly anxious that maybe the bill is going to come in, you know, a dollar earlier, or I mean a dollar more, or a day early. And so, what can make you feel safer emotionally to put yourself on auto pay and use a tool that's going to combat forgetfulness is getting a month ahead on your bills. The majority of Americans, I want to say it's something like 70% of Americans are paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And so that means that at any income, they could be making $100,000, $200,000 a year, and most of them are still paycheck to paycheck because of they still don't understand their emotional relationship with money. And they're still spending more than they make for various reasons. But the idea of putting yourself on auto pay when you're paycheck to paycheck is frightening. But when you're a month ahead on your bills, there is this space, this peace you have to be able to adjust to things that are unexpected. And most of us are afraid of doing the right thing because we're like, well, if I pay all my bills and then my something happens, my daughter comes home and my tire blows, then what am I going to do? It creates a lot of anxiety. We don't have a lot of mental space to process it. And I found that giving yourself, a month ahead on your bills allows you to think very strategically. When we were talking about crisis mode, when we talked a few years ago, and we were talking about like your inability to think critically when you're in crisis mode, and most of the time, that's how we feel. We're trying to make critical financial decisions while we're anxious, while we are in the middle of chaos, and creating some space to think, to talk to your therapist, to decompress, to make sure you're not making an emotional, irrational decision. Um, and being a month ahead on bills is like a very small challenge that you can take to give you that space, but it's a very effective thing you can do. And it allows you to put yourself on auto pay and then take one more thing off of your plate. Like,
Mhm.
I love bill pay day because I'm just looking to make sure that all the bills came in lower than I thought and finding extra money in my budget. Like, I'm not
Huh.
having to remember at 2 o'clock in the morning, that startling feeling of, oh my God, did I forget to press the button? I don't have to have that angst anymore.
Nice. And, Christina B, so the way that I talk about emotional relationship with money, and then I'm gonna let, Coach B go into her thoughts on it as well. It is sometimes we get these rules and thoughts and ideas about money. So I've worked with people that had um like this there was fear or like how they viewed money. There were emotions that came up related to money, or there was a lot of anxiety or stress. I also like to validate that there are situations. So I work with people that are in difficult housing situations, or like they really are in crisis. And in those moments, I want to respond. I don't want to react. because sometimes the reaction can make somebody not say no to their kids or not live within their means. Or I've had to get off TikTok because I love that. I love to get something new. When that box shows up, I don't even know what's in it. I love like adding to cart. And they've done research, and just adding something to your cart can give you like a little, like, it's more enjoyable to add it to the cart than sometimes when you actually when you actually get
Mhm.
it. You get more
I
more
think they've done
dopamine.
research on
They
that,
have.
that
They
when
have.
they measured the dopamine or something to that, it's the transaction, it's this
Mhm,
part, the decision
mhm,
to purchase it, that
mhm.
gives us the greatest high, which is why a lot of times people will get a package in the mail and don't even open it. Like they get it and there's no, the excitement level is nowhere near what it was when they were deciding
So
that they wanted
so
it.
I personally, I have so much save for later in my Amazon account, like,
Me
that
too.
I'm never gonna get it, but, like, I just love that it's just there. I have wish lists on there. I've set boundaries around, like, for my child's birthday and Christmas, we are blessed that he gets spoiled by family. I only have 1 child, and so what ends up happening is I don't really have to buy a whole bunch for him around birthday and Christmas. Because sometimes there can be some guilt as a parent, or there can be. I was raised by a single mom, and my mom often felt like she had to make up for things. And I've told her that the most important thing was her, and I wanted more of her time. That was really what was important to me. And I see this comment here that sometimes people can be afraid of not being of going bankrupt or not being able to pay bills. And
Mhm.
so I have a certain amount that I keep in savings, and if it drops, so I try to keep both my business account and my personal account. I try to put a little aside to save. And then if they're when those student loans were on pause, I didn't pay them. I still, so, like, when programs come out, if I can make adjustments, I do, because that's a low interest. I will pay them off eventually, but, I try to prioritize things, and so I try to pay off the thing that has the highest interest rate. I was raised by an accountant, and so mama taught me from an early age. My mom got me a credit card at 17. I'll probably get my kiddo one at like 15 or 16. It was just good to like learn that, to have that healthy relationship. I can't have cash. So
Mhm.
cash to me, so I think twice about swiping my card versus like using like, if I have cash, I just I want to spend it. And so because for some people what works better for them is to have cash
Mhm.
versus having like their card or whatever. But yeah.
So I have a couple things.
Yes.
So first, I want to go back to putting things in the cart, right? And I think with us, with ADHD people in particular, why that's such an effective money management technique is, of course, it reduces the likelihood of impulsive spending. And
Mhm.
for us, a lot of the times, the reason why we impulsively buy it is because we're afraid we'll forget it.
Mhm.
And when we put it in the cart and we put do save for later, it clears like that fear of I'm going to forget it, because oh yeah, let me go back and I can find it. But when we're not confident that we're going to remember, we think it's too good, I don't want to miss it, I know this is going to solve some problem we've decided we created in our head, and we're like, let's just buy it.
Mhm.
But that ability to go, hey, remind me, favorite it or something,
Mhm.
calms that fear that makes you go, I'm just going to go ahead and buy it now. So that's one thing that I found that the cart seems to resolve for me. The other thing is, I want to go back to the statement about like the emotional relationship with money.
Yes.
I think like some of our emotional relationship with money has to do with what society and what our parents and what people have told us to feel about money. Um, Things like, people who want to feel like they care about humans and they care about the environment, and there's nothing wrong with that feeling, but you might find that those kind of people say things like, I don't care about money.
Oh.
And it's what they're really trying to communicate is that money doesn't matter more to them than something else. But the statement, I don't care about money, and I heard Myron Golden talk about this earlier. He said, if you said that I don't care about my wife, I don't care about my husband, I don't care about my kids, I don't care about my health, how long would it stay?
Yeah.
So, what happens when you say things like, I don't care about money? And you wonder why it doesn't stay. So, that conditioning has subconsciously made us feel like I'm not putting too much value on it. So,
Mhm.
we end up accidentally become not being good stewards of it.
Yeah.
When what we really want to say is we care about the things around us more, and that's okay. And the other thing is cash. So I am a huge advocate of cash. And I find that it's helpful for a lot of people with ADHD because we are out of sight, out of mind people. And and I've asked this question with like every client who's worked with me. I'll ask them, have you ever been to the register and had the cash on you? Had the cash on you and plan to spend cash, but use your card instead. And they're like, yes, 1000%. And I say, why? And they're like, because I wanted to hold in case of emergency. I just felt like, because money feels like it's real. And and there's like an emotional relationship with handing cash over, you feel like you're spending. There's
Mhm.
been articles about the pain of paying and that cash kind of triggers. And it creates an immediate awareness of the decision to buy something. And so, like, to me, when you use your debit card, you typically can't see your balance go down. So you don't actually know the impact of that decision until you look at your bank account and now you have buyer's remorse and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have bought it. But also you're going to forget to return it, right? And with cash, when you're looking at your wallet and you're taking out the cash to hand it over, you immediately see the balance decrease in real time.
Yeah.
And you can go, you know what? Actually, I'm not going to supersize that. I'm going to go ahead with a small. I was supposed to be on a diet anyway. And you can modify your behavior in real time. And so I find cash to be very effective. But to your point, I find that smaller bills are easier for people to spend. People don't like breaking big bills.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you get down to like the ones and
Right.
maybe the fives,
Mhm.
it's a lot easier to
Mhm.
kind of, but I also find that cash sets a hard boundaries. So even if that's the case, when you run out of cash, there are boundaries there. You don't have the ability to talk yourself into buying more. And at the register, when you go, like if you go to the grocery store and you're like, I'm going to set a budget of spending only $100, right? And you get to the register and it's $101, and you're like, are you going to put something back? You're going to be like, I am so proud of you. You did such a good job. You're so close to your budget. You're going to talk yourself right into going to 101. But when you have $100 in cash on you and it comes up to 101, you can't. So
Yeah.
you look at that belt and you make some executive decisions and you go, you know what? I said I was on a diet. I don't even need these cookies. And you're going to put something back. You're going to probably keep the thing that's most important to you. And so I find that cash for a lot of people is a powerful tool, at least in the beginning stage of getting back to controlling impulsive spending, respecting the boundaries you said you wanted to make on spending. And until you get better habits around that rhythm, then I find it to be effective as opposed to digital. But they are creating a lot of tools on digital spending that can help simulate boundaries where they can stop you. I think like some cards, you can set a limit where you can't spend over this amount, even though you have a credit limit higher than that. But again, that goes back to assessing yourself, being really honest with yourself. And I'm really honest with myself. I know I'm an impulsive spender. I know if I go to Walmart, especially the home goods aisle, I'm going to come out with a candle. I
So
just love home
so
goods.
I have to avoid certain stores. I have to avoid. So, like, if I only wanna spend less than $100 on groceries, so we have a store called Wegmans, and I can't walk in. It's like a step down from Whole Foods, maybe a step up
It is
from
the
Trader
most
Joe's.
bougie,
I
beautiful
I
grocery
love
store ever.
I love Wegmans,
They will cook
but
your dinner for you.
but when I go in there, I'm gonna spend 115 to like $200. I just am. But if I go to Aldi, and as long as I ignore I used to have a word for it, but that aisle that has just stuff that you
Mhm.
didn't need, you weren't even coming in there for.
But it's so unique.
Yes, like, as long and so knowing those habits because, sometimes something will happen and it's like, all I need is creamer. I'm not gonna go to Walmart to just get creamer because "Oh, I needed hair stuff. Ooh, I needed this, I needed that." Target, the psychology in that store, oh my gosh, like, they just how clean everything is, like, they just make you want to spend your money, and so just kind of being honest with yourself about what stores maybe trigger more spending, and being intentional. So ADHD, one of the symptoms is impulsivity, doing
Hmm.
something without thinking, and, what it is, because it's this prefrontal cortex, this front part of the brain is actually understimulated. Because often people think that people with ADHD are overstimulated, but no, that's why stimulant medication is often one of the first things that doctors will try. Their brain is actually, I say there, like I'm not, the brain is actually understimulated. And so that's why there's this constant seeking of like something interesting and something I sometimes describe it as like a sleepy brain, where like a toddler that just needs to go to sleep, sometimes they'll start running in circles because they just as soon as they stop, they're gonna fall asleep. And so just knowing what things work for you and
Mhm.
finding ways and tools and things that support that. What are some or do you have any apps that are favorites of yours? Because I have one
Oh
that
my
I wanna
gosh,
share.
yes, I
Yeah.
use so one app that I use, and this is combats time blindness,
Mhm.
um, prone to distraction. It's called Routinery. And I'm going to try to pull it up real quick. But Routinery is a time management system. I used to use an app called 3030, but it went away and it made me sad. And I couldn't find anything for the longest time. But I find that it helps me really understand how long a task really takes
Okay.
because we're delusional.
Mhm.
So there are tasks that we think take 2 minutes, but really take 10. And there are tasks that we think take 10 minutes that really take two. And this is why we're late to everything because we really do not understand how much time we spend on things because, again, hyper focus sometimes, distorted time, and so Routinery has allowed me to see, I set it to be like this many minutes, and then I see a pattern of, I don't quite get this done in 3 minutes. I think I need to give myself 5 minutes for this task.
Mhm.
So now it's beginning to help me understand what time I really have to wake up, how long it really takes me to go through my morning routine. And so if I want to have good habits, I'm setting myself up for success by really understanding how long things take. And then also it helps me with distractions and it creates that you know how we say we like procrastination because we love racing the clock. We love being up against the deadline. Well, now it's almost like gamified because I've got like 10 minutes to do my makeup. And now I'm trying to figure out if I can do my makeup in 10 minutes. I got 3 minutes to make my bed. And there's just a part of me that cannot resist a good competition. And so it feels like a competition with myself every single day. And I don't fight the self care routine as much when I use it. So it's called the Routinery. I wanted you to see what the actual app looks like, but when I press it, it just comes on. But if you create your own rhythm, I don't know if you can
Okay.
see it, you
Okay.
can put your own task in here for your routine and timed it. And when you go through it, it alerts you. So it's like it beeps and tells you you have 1 minute to your next time, which helps with transitions. For my daughter in particular, she struggled with transition. She'd have anxiety when they were moving to the next task. And so one of her accommodations in school was to have her teacher prompt her a few minutes ahead of time to say, hey, we're going to be moving to this task in about 3 minutes, to give her mind time to wrap up, and to finish up if she's lost time. Well, this is what it's doing for me. It's telling me you have 1 minute left of this task. So wrap it up because we're moving on to the next thing. And I found that helpful with my morning self care routine. And I always say financial self care begins with actual self care. Um, it helps with me getting done the tasks I absolutely don't feel like doing in my business, the things I hate. Um, and so Routinery is probably my favorite ADHD task app that I use. But I found like um, the the best technology for me is paper.
Nice.
Writing things down and having my notebook handy because a lot of the times the impulsivity, like the instinct to cut in, is because I'm terrified I'm going to forget this thought. But if I have my notebook here all the time, I can write it down so I can come back to it. And then I'll have like a rush of really good ideas that I'm not confident that tomorrow I'm going to remember it. Like it's crazy how you could be so clear one day and the next day you'd be like, what was I? It's like that feeling of going to the kitchen. Like, what did I come in here for? I
Like,
don't
that
remember
that happens on a regular basis.
why I'm
Like
here.
like
And so having like this notebook with me allows me to write down my thoughts
Mhm.
and be able to come back or have some sort of like something to help me come back to it. And so take like that gets to like the radical self-acceptance. We think that because technology is here, we have to adopt it. Because it's here, we should be using Google Calendar when a paper calendar might be the most effective tool for you. I tell my daughter all the time, stop fighting what actually works just to fit in. Everybody else is using this, and so you want to feel like I can be like everybody else, but why do you have to be? You know,
Yes.
why do you have to be? Why do we're making our lives so much harder trying to use neurotypical tools when we really all should just be searching for what works for us and being okay with that.
And I love following creators that have ADHD and that talk about, oh, like this works or that works. Because sometimes as a community, you can learn like, oh, let me give that a try. And it's okay if I give it a try and that's not for me. Like
Hmm.
that's totally okay. So I love that we're putting this information out
Yeah.
here. I know a creator I follow that was struggling with a routine. She's let go of like what other people she lets go of what other people think. So
Hmm.
other people might not understand why she has laundry baskets on the first floor. But her washing machine, like all her stuff is on the first floor. And so
Hmm.
it's just this is what works best for her and
Hmm.
and in her house. With ADHD, you often have doom piles. If y'all could see my office, I have like multiple like I have so many I have doom
I'm
piles.
thinking of mine right now.
But, like but if I were to organize it and put it away, I wouldn't know where some things are. Like, I know this is this pile. Like, I actually know where things are when it is a little bit more when it's like this. It's how I work, and I don't fight it. And so but the funny thing is, like, if my son's toys are everywhere, when he creates his doom piles, and so
Mhm.
that's where I'm having to, like, have some empathy and, like, take a step back. It's like,
But
"Oh,
you know what
my
I've
piles and
noticed?
your piles, like, we're"
I'm really either really organized or really disorganized.
Yes.
And it's just a matter if I found an effective system for
Yeah.
it. If I found an effective system for it, it's very easy for me to keep up with that. I struggle most with like paper and
Yeah.
email. Like I hate emails. Like that's where things
Uh,
go to
I
die.
asked you for your email and you ignored me. You were like,
Oh, you
"No,
did?
I'm not." I did. I did.
Why would
I was
you?
like I was like, "Email me," and you just you sent everything in Facebook. I was like, "Okay." I think
I'm
I asked
so
you like
sorry. Well, my
twice.
email is hello@youngrichruder.com. But I do check my email, but it's a very big pain point for me.
Yeah.
And mail, like all the amount of like spam we have to filter through. And then I a bit of a OCD, so I can't just throw something away without laying
Yeah.
eyes on it. So then it starts to pile up. And you're busy. We're busy moms, we're doing all the things. And so again, those piles start to creep up on us and create more anxiety. And here's the other thing is, we're talking about knowing your triggers, but and your temptations. Some of those triggers are understanding your emotional ones. Like I start to notice that, oh, I actually don't think I'm depressed right now because I think I'm okay. But I've learned that my home is usually an accurate predictor of what's going on in my life emotionally. And I'll be like, am I depressed? Because what's going on here? My home looks like it does when I am starting to spiral, and I may not notice it because I'm maybe doing a task that I enjoy. So I'm not really addressing my feelings. But what that, untapped can end up looking like is then it moved into your finances because now you have all these things and you have to organize them and you're buying more organizers to or containers for all the stuff. because you think I'm going to put my doom pile in a container and therefore it's all better now.
I just
And now
built a
you're buying.
closet. So I like when we were picking our house. So I have a closet, my husband has a closet, and then like I just my closet. And then if I get mad, because I when I'm mad, I clean. And
Mhm.
so like I'll just go when I'm cleaning and organizing, like I'm just breathing. Like it's very refreshing for me in those moments. But
What I want to know is for
yes.
people who are like, I suspect I have ADHD, but I don't know. And they're not really sure what the process is going to look like. Can you help the audience feel like have an idea of what that process looks like so that it feels like something approachable and not so scary to go about doing? Because
I'm
I
a
think,
person.
and I want to say this part too before you go there, is I think in our community in particular, I think the African American community have a unique relationship with the medical community because of things that have happened historically. And so there's a natural distrust, and there's also this natural feeling of not being heard. That when we complain about things, that we're not being taken seriously, and so hyperactive Black children might be just described as bad and
Oppositional
misbehaving.
defiant disorder
Yeah,
is like
ODD, right? Yes. That was actually one of Jordan's first early diagnoses was ODD, and then the ADHD. Um, and the ADHD makes so much more sense.
so
Um,
I don't I've done a whole video on it. I don't diagnose oppositional defiant disorder because often the practitioner hasn't looked deep enough to see like what else is going on, or if it is truly oppositional defiant disorder, sometimes there are things happening within the family
mhm.
where and so yeah, that's that's my one of my many soapboxes. But you asked me a question.
Yes. And I'm gonna look. Have both of us forgotten how ADHD in real life, y'all? People who want to understand what the
Yes.
diagnosis process is
There we
like.
go. And so I'm a believer in um research, but I want people to be careful that they're getting their information from verified sources. So sometimes on TikTok, it'll be like, oh, you have ADHD if you, and it'll give really generic things that are not the actual criteria for ADHD. The symptoms that are listed apply to anxiety. It applies to depression. Like it can apply to a lot of different things, and so just being careful if people are giving very general information, like if your favorite color is blue, you might have like no, 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 like that's way too general. Um I would not let the person know, like if you have done a lot of self research, some doctors get really mad if you come in and you say, I think I might have ADHD. I'm just being honest. Like I'm being really, really honest. Now, I can go in and I can say, I've talked with my doctor and we're suspecting, and I want this ruled out. I think people should be able to go in and say, this is what I think is going on with me, because my perspective is that you are the expert on you. I'm the expert on the psychology stuff. And
Mhm.
with ADHD, if there's been a history of trauma, sometimes that can complicate things. And I'm very open with people that my style is cautious. So if it's this person's very first, so if I'm working with a child in foster care and this is their very first evaluation, they have no treatment, I might say, like, hey, let's look at addressing the trauma first and
Mhm.
see what we have in a year or two. Because unless there's like a strong history of ADHD, or unless there are some other things that present, because some stuff can look like ADHD and it's not, and so it's very, very complicated. But the assessment process often starts with a psychological evaluation. So, reaching out to a psychologist. Some insurance companies require a referral from the medical doctor or from a therapist. Not all of them do, and they can be expensive. So one of the first things you do is you ask, "Are you in network with my insurance company?" And because some people, they don't accept insurance for those evaluations. I also love the fact that um, with a with the assessment process. I can't go into too many details, and there's some stuff going viral over on TikTok of somebody talking about their autism assessment and, like, specific questions, and
Mhm.
that can cause problems with the actual test. So I don't go into all the specifics of
Mhm.
what we're looking for, but they're gonna test things, um they're gonna do cognitive tests, they're gonna ask about anxiety, depression, questions like that. And then you normally meet to go over the report. But that's normally what the process looks like. Some doctors require an outside diagnosis before they prescribe anything. And part of the reason for that is because some ADHD medications can be abused or used for, and they're regulated. But someone who has ADHD that takes Ritalin, the way it's prescribed, it's not gonna make them high. It's not gonna make them like they're just it's gonna make their brain work the way that it's like it's gonna make things clearer. But it's not going so somebody that doesn't have ADHD that abuses the medication, that's where there can be issues and problems. Some people also ask me questions like, "How long will I need to be on medication?" And depending on the person's life, because I work with some clients where it's like, if they get a job where they're outside all day and they're doing what they love and they're not having to do telework, they won't like they'll be fine. Once they get through school, they're fine. But then there are other people, there are other situations where the way ADHD impacts their life and their day, they do need additional supports. I like to talk about
Their
neurofeedback.
career is not ADHD friendly
What'd you say?
because their career may not be ADHD friendly. So
It's not
it's
a matter of it not being ADHD friendly. So, like, an accountant with one of some of the symptoms of ADHD is maybe making minor mistakes.
mhm,
Now, if that person is a landscaper, making minor mistakes, like, "Whoops, I accidentally mowed the wrong like, it's the issues 'cause I can't make minor mistakes if I'm an accountant. Does that on a
mhm,
consistent basis. Does that make
mhm.
sense?
Right.
Or, so often people with ADHD will be drawn to careers that adjust and change. You'll find a lot of ER nurses. I think my camera paused. Can you still hear me?
I still hear you, but the face that you have right now,
Oh my
the
gosh.
face that you have
Me
right
me and
now,
my camera, it and my if so
the,
just
the
stay
audience
in the
still loves you.
studio if it cuz my on my side, my computer, I might have to come back. So I'm going to give it to you to chat real quick and I'm going to refresh and come right back.
So I'm gonna look through some of the comments in here because there's been a lot of engagement in here, and I want to make sure that I'm getting to talk to some of you guys about what you said. Um, uh, Paper is best. I think that's going back to paper over technology. Sticky notes are my friend, so they're my friend too. Um, Doom pie holes. Oh, I love this acronym for Doom. Didn't organize, only moved. I love that. I don't know if that's if you made that up or if that's just something that is already out there that I haven't stumbled upon, but I will be using that. I love that. Um uh let's see. Found you, Dr. Barry, subscribed. Yay! You guys need to because your content is
No, no,
amazing. I
no. So
told you.
that was on your channel. So that was Christina. That was for you. She came over
Oh,
to your channel.
well, welcome. You're a new baddie. But I love I love your channel. Like I love your
Oh.
TikToks. I love your videos. I cannot tell you how many times you have made me a better parent.
Mm.
Like how many times you have made me a better parent. Your perspective, and this is why I love your profession because it life doesn't come with a manual. We're just figuring it all out. And then we've got this extra layer of neurodivergency, and that definitely didn't come with a manual. If it was written with a right hand instead of a left hand. And having somebody to teach us the language to help us understand our emotions, so that we can navigate things more efficiently is just game changing. But I don't want you to lose your train of thought
No,
from
you're
where you
good.
were
And
talking
it's
on.
so I actually have a like a little banner that goes when I lose my train of thought. We won't do it now, but I like it. This is something, this is normal. This happens. So what
I
are
hope
your
the
thoughts?
audience will bring us back.
So I got a good question about self-assessment scales. And so
Ooh,
there
I have
are
one over here.
some ADHD questionnaires that are free and publicly available online. And people can, because sometimes your therapist or your medical doctor will ask you to do one of those. And so but it just won't give you a diagnosis.
Mhm.
So that's where you do have to meet with the person, because sometimes there are lots of different reasons people can struggle with attention and focus. So there are thyroid issues that can mimic ADHD. There are other diagnoses, there are other things that can be going on. Another great question, has testing changed over the years? So I've been doing this since 2005, and the tests get updated, but my standard testing process is pretty similar than what I was with what I was trained on. A neuropsychological digs deeper versus a psychological evaluation. Neuropsychologicals are sometimes more expensive, but yes, we are nerds here. We call ourselves psych nerds, and you're like a money nerd. I love it.
Yeah, love it. I love it. And I'm becoming a bit of a psych nerd too, because studying ADHD for the purposes of money management has got me fascinated.
Uh-oh.
It's gotten me really fascinated. Like I did this ADHD training. I'm an accredited financial counselor, and so we have to do continuing education every year. And I was doing this training on ADHD and money management, and it was talking about the executive functions. And I found this such like I love illustrations. Your guest earlier who commented about the illustrations, I love them because it sticks. It helps my memory when I can see something very clearly. And she described the executive functions like a Jenga board, like playing Jenga. And she was like, you have these 7 executive functions, and they're developed from youth to adulthood in a very particular order. And we need to also address them in a particular order. And so if we're top loading with problem solving, critical thinking things, which is at the very top, before we've addressed like self awareness or inhibition, well, the Jenga board will tumble. Like, you play Jenga, you pull the pieces out. If you got too much at the top and really nothing at the bottom, it's going to fall apart. And that's where my thought process about financial self care begins with actual self care. Because when I looked at those levels, and if I can recall them in order, I'll tell them in order. Is that the bottom layer was self awareness, the like, I didn't eat all day today, like not even being aware of how you physically feel, emotionally feel, or what's going on in your life, just like not having this awareness. And it happens to me all the time where I went an entire day and didn't eat, where I don't even know how I feel about something. I'm just kind of going through the motions. And so until I'm in like crisis mode and I have to respond to it. And then the second one was inhibition, like the inability to like stop, like, and yeah, made me think of like, I really want to stop scrolling. I really want to stop scrolling. And no matter how much I try, sometimes it feels like an invisible force that won't allow me to shift over. I think the one above that was working memory, poor non-visual memory, poor visual memory, emotional self-regulation, and then your critical thinking. And it made me think like we jump to the budget, like
Yeah.
let's organize some things, right, when we really need to address some of those bottom layers first
Yeah.
and figure out, why are you resisting this task in the first place? Is that you're having a hard time seeing yourself be successful? And where does that come from? Like, is it because you failed a lot of times in the past? And that might mean you might need to talk to your therapist, because you might need to unpack some of the things that happen in the past that's making it hard for you. When you talked about like trauma and depression mimicking these things, it made me think of like that crisis moment for me. During the pandemic, before the pandemic, I think I'd always been like pretty high functioning. And I was sharing this with you earlier. Part of why we, especially women, get diagnosed later in life is we're not the hyperactive. So we're not getting diagnosed when we're in kindergarten, right? We're probably inattentive
Or
and daydreaming.
or the hyperactive is excessive talking. So
Me,
it's
on my
not.
report card. Talks too much in class. I don't have a report card that doesn't
So
finish. They had a
I just
clue that I was
I learned how to pass
ADHD.
notes. I would just be I got real sneaky at pass. I didn't get caught.
Yes,
I didn't.
the fact that that was the most obvious clue, but no, they missed it, right? So yes, definitely every report card. I missed honor roll so many times. I had straight
Oh,
A's and didn't get honor roll because back in the day they will give you N's on
okay.
behavior, and if you didn't get at all S's, that you got any N's, you didn't get honor roll regardless of your academic grades. So yeah. So, the late diagnosis, and I was having a conversation with my daughter, and I said to her, you know what? I think the reason why I didn't suspect it was because I was doing well in school for the most part until I got to high school. And why do you, and I asked her, why do you think high school was when I started to notice that something was quite off? And I said, think about right now, your school typically requires you to tell me things. In high school, they're trying to train you to transition you to adulthood. So they take a lot of the responsibility off of the parent and try to put the responsibility on the child to start doing some of the, advocating for themselves. And that's the first time you're really doing a lot of the executive functioning for yourself. Because up until that point, somebody was telling me when to eat. It's lunchtime. Somebody was telling me to get exercise. It's recess. Somebody was driving me to an appointment to be on time. Somebody was helping me do most of the executive functionings. And then I got to high school, and suddenly I have to do a lot of these things for myself, and I'm just realizing something's not there. And then you get to adulthood where you really have to executive function,
Yeah.
and you're fighting, and you're doing it a pretty decent job until you have a child who also has ADHD, and you're trying to manage both of them. And so for the most part, I think I was doing a good job of like outrunning the chaos of it all. Like
Mhm.
I just keep going, and then the pandemic happened and we slowed down, and you start to feel everything you're running away from. And I remember one of the early things that I'd said to my psychiatrist is, I just feel like my brain is broken. I
Mm.
feel like there are always things I struggle with. Like I was always late, but I was struggling to do things I used to be able to do really well. Like I'm really struggling to start tasks I didn't struggle to start with,
Yeah.
and not really understanding the correlation between depression and
Yeah.
ADHD. And that part of the reason why I was struggling more, my executive functionings were being tasked a lot harder,
Yeah.
and dealing with those big emotions and not actually going to therapy for them was making the executive functioning even harder, because I was dealing with depression and not but prior to that wasn't going to therapy. And it's like doing that self-care work and learning how to manage my emotions, learning how to even be aware that I'm having big feelings right now, that I'm going through something, helps avoid that shutdown. Because what happened was not dealing with all of those emotions made the executive functioning ability completely stop. And even though I knew how to manage money well, been doing it all my life, I just shut down. I wasn't checking my mail. I wasn't checking my email. I wasn't paying bills. I wasn't getting out of bed.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people can find themselves in destructive financial situations because they didn't address their emotional situation. They didn't address their mental situation. And so that's why I kind of wanted to have this conversation, because I noticed that people with ADHD are prone to having more anxiety, more depression. And so,
And it's often when things aren't managed. Does that make
mhm,
sense? Or like when crisis, because I see 2020 as like crisis and when things shift and when things start to get more complex and change. I saw a lot of people come in for assessments and for treatment during that time, but part of it was they needed the what's it called? Uh where somebody is watching you work. Like they needed that body doubling of
Yes.
being in the office. So there are people that I know. So I used to go live on TikTok just to get my notes done because just having them there and just like I would call it a body doubling session, and I would
Mhm.
normally have a book playing in the background or something. Um, I've kind of transitioned more to YouTube and off TikTok more. TikTok is a lot of selling. Like there's so many ads and so much, and I have bought a few things on
The
there. So
death
like
zone if you're an impulsive spender, guys.
so I can't and don't click the ad because once they know that you might like it, they're gonna like bombard you with that one over and over again. And so somebody asked a great question about any beneficial money management apps for ADHD, because you talked about the routinely, the one for routine. I know
Mhm.
for me personally, sometimes there are things that are already in your bank's app. So if you bank with a certain bank, they might have like a spending analysis, or they might have where you can set things up. I've also had some people where they just looked at their account once a week, and that
Mhm.
was just for them to be more aware. So they scheduled Sundays or Saturday, like they had a particular day where they just logged in to see what's due. I always sign up for that electronic billing for bills that
Mhm.
can where I get the email from my bank. And for me, once I see an email, I have to go and pay that bill.
Mhm.
Even if I'm scheduling it for the day it's due, if it's not on one that's on auto pay, because if I ignore the email, it no longer exists and it won't get done. Any apps or things that any apps that have been helpful for the money management portion?
So I'll say for me personally, I have not found
Yeah.
any apps that I love. There
Okay.
was one app that I really liked for the actual action of paying bills, but they went away, so I won't have your heart broken
Okay.
along with mine.
No.
And it wasn't Mint. It was an app called Check, and then another company took over it.
Okay.
And then Mint acquired them, and now Mint has gone out of business. And when
Okay.
Mint started acquired them, they weren't doing it well anyway. So
Okay.
I don't love that. A lot of people in the ADHD community like YNAB, but I don't. I
Okay.
think it requires too many intricate steps, and that's just enough to say I don't want to do it. I feel
Mhm.
like keeping things simple is the most effective thing, making it very easy for you to see what you need to do. Um, and so for me, one of the ways that I manage my money and I teach my clients to manage their money is to have different accounts for different things.
Okay.
Um, and on my designated day, I call it Bay Day.
Oh.
Before anything else, Bay, move that money, right? So on Bay Day, moving money from the bill, from that drop zone account into the account that's for bills, into the account that's going to hold your saving buckets, so that you don't accidentally spend it. Moving your money into your spending account, and so that you don't have to manage yourself so actively.
Yeah.
Because if you only have an account that's just for spending and only that amount is in there, and you set your bank up where it doesn't allow you to overdraft, then you don't have to do so much managing.
Mhm.
It's just having systems that really support the boundaries you really need. Because again, that second layer of that Jenga piece was inhibition, inability to stop. So it's like when you can create barriers and boundaries for yourself, you don't need um if that system fails you, it's not as important. It's like that using cash. It's like that boundary is there. So if you struggle to stop, it will stop for you. The turning off, overdraft will help stop you from accidentally overdrafting when you're not actually logging into the app. Because what I found is we download all these apps because they're new and they're shiny and they're fun, and we look at them and then we forget they're even there, and then we forget how to use them. And in
Yeah.
a moment that you need to make a financial decision, it's not effective. I don't know if you saw that video I did about where my house almost caught fire. My toaster oven caught fire.
No.
And my friend said, only you could turn a fire into a budgeting moment.
No.
And I was explaining that when the fire broke out, I remembered that I had a fire extinguisher, and I went to go grab the fire extinguisher. And it was crazy because the day before I saw an ad that said 90% of people don't know how to use a fire extinguisher. And I remember thinking, man, that's really high. only to get to the next day and discover that I'm part of the 90%
Oh,
because I don't really know. I've never used it before. And I mean, like in general, I could
yeah.
probably like figure it out, but like
And also,
really,
you're in a high stress situation, and it's gonna
exact,
be like, yeah.
exactly, like you don't have time to think. But then I remembered that I also had this fire extinguisher can that was more like a spray can, right? And I had it
Oh,
under my
cool.
sink because I bought it for outside, and I just took it out and I sprayed it right out.
Smart.
And it made me think of budgeting. And I always tell people, use the tools that you know how to use.
I
That's
like
the
that.
best tool, because in crisis, when you're making financial decisions, you don't have to think like, how do I use this app again? How do I move this over? If there's friction, you're going to stop using it. That's why you feel like I start things and I never finish it, because you're using something that's just there's too much friction there. So for me, I love using Google Sheets to track things, but I also hate tracking. So I use cash because my receipts count as my tracking. And so at the end of the week, all I have to do is look at my receipts that are categorized by my cash budget wallet, and that tells me how much I spent on food. And I don't have to log it on my spreadsheet because I already logged the ATM withdrawal for the week.
Nice.
So I don't have to go in every single day. I just need every week to log that I pulled out X amount of dollars for these transactions, and I let my receipts tell me how much. And the beauty about using cash is I get to see my wins, right? Because at the end of the week, if I have money left over,
Yeah.
I know it. So I get that dopamine hit of, look at you. I got
Aw.
money left over. What are we going to do with this? And that feels really exciting too.
I wanted to go to this next question. Wait, is there a way to filter what is a need purchase versus a want based dopamine seeking? And the funny thing is that both can give you that dopamine. I know the impulsive one because I didn't go into Amazon to look for it. Like it was just I was just there and it was like, ooh, like, so we have some trips coming up this summer, and, I am a big planner, but sometimes I can over plan or I can overbuy for every little situation. And so, that's where doing to me, a need is my multivitamins, my like, the things that I need to take care of myself. A want is that would be nice, and then like a luxury is like something that's probably more expensive, and there might be like a cheaper version that might be okay, but and so that's how I kind of break things down for myself. I love the whole adding to cart and then making sure that I have boundaries. And that could be I might have to have you back in a few months or something. We can talk about boundaries and money
Yes.
because I think that
A
is
topic all in
huge.
itself.
That's a whole other topic that we don't have time for.
Yes. Rejection sensitivity. Yeah, there's so many areas there. Um, Gosh, I had a thought. Where'd it go? It ran away, y'all.
We were
It ran
talking
away.
like a want,
Oh, the
need.
adding things to cart. Uh, you know, I think that a lot of times, whenever there's a want, it's fulfilling some unmet need. It's always trying to fulfill some unmet need. I think the problem is we're not doing enough time to figure out what the real need is.
Mhm.
And sometimes the need is I'm bored. Sometimes the need is I'm lonely.
Yeah.
Sometimes the need is I'm sad. Sometimes the need is I'm angry. Sometimes the need is I feel inadequate. I feel poor today. And I think we don't do enough of figuring out what that root work, that real need is of why we're making this. Like, what is it really satisfying? What is it really solving for you? Um, I think when you get to a point where you can really figure out that need, you're less likely to buy stuff to fill that need, and you're able to find free ways to actually fill it. So, like, I'm gonna give you a perfect example of this. I used to be, I still love thrifting. I love thrifting. I love consignment shops, and I justified to myself that this was an okay spending habit because it's thrifting. I'm paying practically nothing for it. And I started noticing like when I did it most, and it was when I didn't have Jordan, and I didn't have friends. I moved here from New Jersey, and I'm a bit of an introvert, at least with new people. And so when I didn't have her, I should be out doing adult things. I'm free, no kid, but I wasn't. I was bored, and so I would go to the thrift store, and I realized, man, I'm bored, and I was like, I need a hobby, also I need friends. I need to be intentional about making relationships so that this isn't what I'm doing, because what all I was doing was creating Saturday laundry. I had so many clothes to wash, and I was like, I never want to be able to do this. I never want to be able to go 1, 2 months without washing clothes, because I own that many clothes. Nicely organized, yet a pain. But I needed to see that this was boredom. I wanted something to do with my time. I was struggling to sit still. Right. I should have known, right? ADHD was in there, right? I
Restlessness.
needed something to do. And so I was shopping for that purpose. Another thing is like, this goes back to like understanding your spending triggers and your spending temptations. Like, I had a client who went and she wanted to get a manicure and a pedicure, but it was because she got into an argument with her child's father, and she took her, and she wanted her son to come and get this pedicure and manicure with her. And she was like, he didn't want to come, but I made him come. And I was like, why did you make yourself spend more money on the thing? And she was like, because I guess I was mad, right?
And he could have just sat there in the chair. Like, he didn't have to get like, he could just sat there and, like, played on a phone or something. I don't know. Like, he could
Yeah.
have.
She's like, he
Aw.
wanted company. I said, so you
But yeah.
bought some company.
Yeah.
And so there's two things: is you wanted some safety
Yeah.
with that emotion. So you have your broke best friend with you, our kids, right? And then the other thing is
He
how you
cost so
solve
much money.
how you solve. I call Jordan my rich best friend though, because she probably got more money than me.
Aw.
Um, that girl is serious about her money, her coins. She asked me the other day if I could invest in some supplies so she could buy some more products to sell bracelets at school, but that's another story for another day. But she, I said, the other thing is like you feel like I'm paying them back by I'm gonna go spend, right? But what if you used anger and to save?
Mm.
I'm so pissed off, I'm gonna put some money in my bank account, like angrily save, like
Yep.
that way I don't, because one of the issues for her was feeling like financially beholden to someone, when you feel like you are stuck in a situation and so you have no choice, and so this is acting out. It's like, if you're feeling like you're trapped in a situation financially, let anger fuel you to save instead. But like, you have to know that that's what's happening in the first place. So I think like the question about the need is like, when you're seeing something you want to put in your cart, what's the need? So for me, again, I said sometimes the need is I'm trying to fulfill the need of forgetting. I see it, I like it, I'm afraid I'll forget it. And the need I'm really trying to fulfill is I'm trying to resolve the fear that I'm going to forget a really good tool for something I don't need right now, but I know I could really use this later. And I put it in the cart. When I realized that that was the problem, putting it in a cart solved that problem. I didn't have to actually check out for real.
And really coming back to it a day or 2 later. Like, do you still like, and I think sometimes you can assess it better if you put some time in between there. And, I love this conversation. I wanna go on ahead and start wrapping it up. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. So we know each other in real life. Like, that's
Yeah.
we didn't start with that. So,
No.
oh my gosh, was it high school? It was college high school?
I just moved. I just graduated from high school. So
Okay.
2020, I moved to Virginia, and
In 2020? I thought
mhm.
it wasn't
Sorry,
2000? Thank you. I was like not 2020.
sorry. The twos are in the wrong place. Sometimes I feel like I might be also a little dyslexic.
2002,
So
2002.
yeah,
Okay,
2002 is when
okay.
I graduated. Right numbers, wrong order. 2002 is when I graduated high school, and I moved here for college. And I met you then.
Ah,
And we have been fast friends. That's why I said, when I watch your channel, I forget that we're actually friends. Like, I feel like I'm watching somebody, like my favorite. I said, you're our channel's favorite mental health professional, and I mean that. Like, I completely depart from the idea that I know you, and that's hard. A lot of times we struggle to receive wisdom and advice from people we know because we knew them when they were just little Eddie.
and I think you can speak to the boundaries part, because even though, because sometimes this will happen where people will want me to give them advice, and I'm gonna lead you to a therapist. Like, I'm not.
Mhm.
'Cause if somebody DMs me and they're like, "Hey, I have a lot going on," I'll be like, I'll send you some resources to a therapist really,
Mhm.
really quick. And so,
Oh, speaking
I
of which,
yes, go ahead. Oh,
can you make sure? I want to make sure that the audience who are like, okay, I see what level I need to work on, and maybe I need a therapist for this, or maybe I need this. Like, do you have any resources
Yes.
for both the therapeutic process, like just your resources? I want to.
And so one of my favorite sites is psychologytoday.com. A lot of now the thing with that site is that therapists have to pay to be on it. So I am not on Psychology Today because I stay fully booked. I don't need to pay to be on a directory, but that's a really common directory where you can sort it by your insurance and by like what you're looking for, and then you can look at the different profiles. The right fit is so important. And my very first therapist, she wasn't the right fit. She just wasn't right for me. And I tried to meet with another therapist, and it just we actually scheduled a time to meet, and she didn't show up, and like we never and like nothing happened. It was like, okay, no
This is
problem.
weird.
Okay. But, I think things happen because it didn't work out with her. I did meet with a really, really great person. And, and then a therapy den. Therapy den is a great one. If you go over to my page, I always have resources and tools. This video is in my therapeutic resources and also my ADHD playlist. So I have two playlists that this video will be on. And I know the therapeutic resources one has like breaks down some more information about if you are looking for a psychological, what questions to ask. If you are looking for a therapist, what are some general questions and things that you might ask? Because that process can be intimidating. For me, what works best is somebody that I can email. So that's why I like Psychology Today, because you can email someone and I don't
Mm,
have to because making if you're looking for a therapist or a psych eval, you might end up calling like 10, 15 people, and the one or two people that get back to you might not be accepting new clients. And so it can really be a
discouraged.
process. It can be so discouraging. And so I like to give people easy points where it's like you can just message the person and then they get back to you that way, and you're able to kind of start that process.
Thank you so much for that. I'm sitting here. I'm laughing at myself because I'm moving around, and I'm wondering if your audience is
No,
counting how
nobody.
many times I've moved in this one video.
Well,
Clearly, I got the hyperactivity.
and I shouldn't have a spinny chair, but like I do all my videos here in this spinny chair, and this is a safe community, a safe place. I actually tell parents that forcing a child with ADHD to be still will often make them not concentrate. So often the movement actually helps them focus
Mm-hmm.
because if they just it's like I just have to sit still, don't move. Like they're just focusing on being still. They're not actually listening to anything
Mm,
that's being said.
thank you
And
for
so
that
they
tip.
don't so they don't like because so what I do, my child, he'll be all over the place and I'll ask him, I'll be like, "What did I say?" And he'll repeat it to me. It's like, "All right, you're
Hmm.
listening."
Right.
Okay, continue.
So I want to piggyback off of what you said about the right fit, because
Yes.
I think that's so important. I always say finding a therapist is like finding a spouse. Like you really are looking for someone who makes you feel safe, because that's the only way you're going to be able to be fully vulnerable and get the most out of the experience. And I think the same is true with your financial coach. So not everybody who reaches out to me is a good fit for me, and I will refer, someone reaching out to me to another coach in a heartbeat if I feel like there's another coach who can serve them better. I don't, and I do it because I care more about your results than I care about gaining another client. That's not important to me. I really want you to get what you need. And here's the thing: as I realized, I used to feel like really bad because people would be like, "Well, why don't you want to work with men?" It's like it's not that I won't want to work with men. It's just that I realize that I don't understand your unique problems the way I understand a woman's.
Mhm.
The unique issues that you deal with in life that I kind of know, kind of, because maybe what you said, but the things we kind of hold inside. And that creates a unnecessary obstacle to being able to support you. It's kind of like you and I have talked about this. It's like finding a therapist. My therapist, ironically, is an older white woman, but oftentimes you hear people say like they want to work with a black therapist if they're black because there are some things they just simply don't have to explain because they don't have to take the time to educate their therapist on what microaggressions feel like. And so then you kind of instinctively understand why a person might be taking an action because you have a similar lived experience. It's the same thing with financial coaching and with ADHD. Anybody could support you, but somebody who has ADHD who's coaching you around money is going to understand forgetfulness. I had a client who was like, I was looking at the clock. I was so excited about our session all day long. I was like 2 minutes before, and then I just forgot. And I said, she was like, I'm so sorry. I value your time. I apologize. I'm so sorry. And I said, it's okay. I know who I'm coaching. For that reason, I don't ever have my clients' appointments booked back to back. I always have buffer window because I anticipate 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I anticipate maybe needing to reach out in case you got time blind, right? Both of us losing track of time and us going over 5 minutes, right? I anticipate that. And so you can give yourself a lot less anxiety and stress about the support you're getting because you know that person understands you um, in a natural way.
I like that you said that because I don't so if a client if their session is from 3 to 4 and they show up at 3:15, I let my clients know that I have a 20-minute grace period. Now there
Mhm.
is a certain point where we will have to reschedule. Like
Right.
it's just the way
Absolutely. Because we can't get the most
and
out of
then
it.
and then also it's like, hey, because if they show up at 3:15, but some therapists are trained to view a client being late as resistance. Like what's getting in the way of you? I don't care. Like just you came. Like I don't automatically view a client being late as them being resistant.
Mhm.
I do know that for certain clients, if they're not there early, I normally message them, "Hey, are we good?" Because I know, like, you're because if they're not coming at all, then I get to, like, watch YouTube or, like, I'm gonna go and do something else, and, I don't charge a no-show fee
Mhm.
because I'm not able to charge Medicaid clients, and in my mind and I do have a percentage of my caseload is state insurance, and, I don't wanna remember, "Are you Medicaid? Are you not?" Like, so I just don't charge. Now somebody can lose their time slot. So
Mhm.
if a certain client in like a valuable time slot, if they're consistently missing, then we might say, I might set a boundary around that particular slot. But and I think knowing, do you feel seen and heard, or are you feeling judgment? But I sometimes check in because sometimes it might be from my end, it might not be from the therapist end.
Mhm.
But there are some therapists because if I get there and they're like, "Oh, you finally showed up," like, "Why would you
Mhm.
what?" Like, that's rude.
Right.
Like, I would that's
Yeah,
passive
you don't want
aggressive
to
and
deal with that
condescending.
on top of what you were already coming to therapy for, and you
Exactly.
don't want to deal with that on a coaching end on top of what you were already struggling with. And
Yes.
so for me, it's about allowing the person to understand that I see you and I see your struggles, and there's no judgment with them. Let's just figure out what resources actually work better for you. That you don't have to feel judged when you're like, I just keep forgetting what to pay my bills. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I know, me too. So let's create enough cushion where you feel confident putting yourself on auto pay, where that's not scary for you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I keep going to the grocery stores and buying 20 packs of ketchup, right? And I'm wasting a lot of money grocery shopping because I'm throwing away food I've forgotten. Okay, let's create some systems around how you're organizing your kitchen and how you're managing that so that way you can stop spending money there. Because I see the problem
Yeah.
and you don't have to explain the problem to me and the level of depth that you have to explain it to somebody else. And you don't have to battle their belief because a lot you could explain it and they could still be like, you just need to work harder, try harder. And this isn't a try harder thing.
And so I view ADHD as like a skills. Like sometimes a person doesn't have certain skills
Mhm.
and they might need those skills. So before I say somebody won't do, I first figure out, can they do the thing I'm asking them to do? And that's what there's a famous psychologist that gives information because some parents get really frustrated with kids that have ADHD because they're like, they just won't make their bed. And the guy will say, do a backflip. He's like, I want you to do a backflip. Feel like I don't know how. Okay, so I want you to go backwards, land on your hands, stand up. Like this is, and they explain how to do a backflip. Now do a backflip. They're like, oh, like I don't like first you have to do like a back bend. Like there are stages to build
Mhm.
up. Like even if I tell you how to do a thing, like if you don't have the building blocks, like you were talking about earlier with executive functioning, you can't do the thing just because I've told you, over and over, this is how you do it. So yeah.
Let me tell you something, and I know we're supposed to be wrapping up, but I just have to say this part because I was reading some research about how the ADHD, like the regular person's brain, isn't fully like developed until like 24 years
20.
old,
Mhm.
and then like ADHD, there's like the rule of 30, so it's like 30% behind, right? And so it got me thinking, like regular people, their brain is not fully developed until 24-year-old, and think about all the big financial decisions we are asked to make
18.
before we even reach 24. But by the time we reach 24, we've chosen a college, racked up 30 to $100,000 in student loan debt, picked a husband. That was an expensive decision we may regret being in, right? We bought a house, we bought a car. We made a lot of decisions before that most important part of our Jenga board is fully developed, that executive functioning, planning, problem solving area is fully formed. But then with ADHD, we're really like I said, I think when I did the math, it was like I'm 40 years old, but really I'm 28. And I was like, I just gave myself, or 26, I can't remember. I just gave myself my youth back. But when you think about it from the expectation perspective, would you expect a 15-year-old to be able to do this really well? And that goes back to like, we're getting angry at people for not following directions. But would you get angry at your 4-year-old niece if they were 11, right? If you were, would you get angry at them? So it's like being really understanding what to expect of them and giving them, so like sometimes it's they do need it broken out, like maybe they can do a back bend, but they do need you to give those broken instructions, and we're giving them too much all at once. I learned with my daughter that when I ask her to clean her room because she can forget some of the pieces, I can't say clean her room. I have to say, can you go pick up your shoes? Let's start with one task. Can you, okay, your shoes are made up, make up your bed. Give her the pieces, and that way she can just focus on that one task, and then I'll come back in. And it seems like she's so smart. You feel like you shouldn't have to give that, but that's what she needs. Go ahead.
And sometimes some kids respond better to text versus telling them. Does that make
Hmm.
sense? So sometimes even if you text them or message them, or sometimes we've written down, we've sat down on just like a sat, like we've sat down and broken down the steps
Hmm.
of it, and they just check it, they just do it themselves,
Hmm.
to help build up those skills.
Hmm.
I
I
love
love that.
that. My last little analogy is for some people, medication is what works best, and I heard someone explain, like, it can be like glasses, and, so I need my glasses. I don't need them to see up close. I can read the chat, but if I was out driving, the state of Virginia said I must wear, 'cause
I
I
have the
tried
opposite
to
problem. I
you
can't see anything right in front of me, and it's the dumbest vision problem possible because
you're
I do
you're
my makeup blind,
farsighted.
y'all. It's a by miracle that I look like anything because I don't know where my hand is when I'm doing my makeup, but I can see stuff way down the street. It's stupid. It's a stupid vision
Oh.
problem, but you're
But
right.
but either way, because sometimes people will ask, like, "Well, I have to be on this for the rest of my life," and mental health is health, and for some people, there are things, there are tools, there are things that just help things work for them, and I'm so glad because I follow a few psychiatrists that talk about the medication that they're on for themselves, and they talk about, they're just very open with those things.
Hmm.
And I love the transparency, because sometimes you assume what other people are doing. So there are lots of people that like assume that, oh, you're this or you're that, or I don't know, like sometimes we make assumptions about how things are for other people, and you never know what it is, what it's like to be in their shoes, like what they're actually struggling with. And so
Hmm.
yeah.
Yes. I hope that this audience feels so much more seen, and not just them, because even if you don't have ADHD, you might be married to somebody with one, you may be raising someone with one, you may be working with someone with one. And I feel like when you begin to understand them more, you can respond to them more compassionately. I feel like discovering and choosing ADHD as my niche in money management, even though I've always loved money management, the choice to decide to focus on just my neurodivergent community um, forced me to see my daughter
Oh,
more clearly, and it made me a better parent. So when I'm doing research for my clients, I begin to go, I think about
huh.
my child and I go, huh, okay, okay, I was being a little unreasonable about what my expectations were. Like, okay, if she were 12, it would make sense that she would have this question, right? I wasn't thinking about it very clearly. So it allowed me to understand what I can do to support her more effectively, and not create a negative voice in her, a negative inner monologue where she's beginning to have her self-esteem diminished because she's constantly hearing me say things like, why don't you just follow directions? Why don't you just, do what I ask? You never do what I want you to do. Those little things that we tend to say when we're frustrated with our kids, or we're frustrated with our spouse, not realizing what they're struggling with inside. So, whether you have ADHD or you're an advocate or loved one of someone with one, I hope that this conversation was empowering.
I love that. And so we are like 2 preachers over here that are closing for the 5th time.
We both come
So,
from
but
the church.
for real this time. Y'all make sure to support Young Rich Rooted. Coach B is doing a series on ADHD and money. And so she's on YouTube and Facebook. We have all her links down in the description. And then for Coach B's audience, my links are down there. Like I said, I cover like court crimes, but the psychology, I try to do it in a way that's not as triggering. But if that's the type of content that you'd like to support, feel free to like, share, subscribe. But we hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.